All right. Hi, and welcome to the very first attempt at this thing called a podcast by Dave Tott. My first ever chance to actually interview my longtime correspondent and friend, Electra.
Hi.
On the air. I don't know how long I've known of you, but I only actually physically met, 4 years ago? 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tonight I wanted to talk about 4 things of issues. We have a huge political issue happening today with the FCC attempting, and the European Commission.
And the EU, yes.
Yeah. Attempting to make it nearly impossible to update routers in the field to work better. And that's the subject of a rather large letter to the FCC by my group called the Sarawart Project. But the proposed rulings affect nearly every possible free software attempt to make changes to your own devices. It's really ludicrous in a lot of ways as to how the FCC thinks about this issue.
Well, their idea is obviously... Okay, you just dropped your bottle.
Okay.
I hope the cap is on.
Is this good?
Well, no. I'm totally fine if you can just...
All right. We'll just leave it on
Pick up my
the edit
voice.
that way. Voice. All right. Go ahead, Electra. We'll edit all that out later.
Well, I don't know. I don't mind.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to actually start. You have an enormous background in mesh networking. When did you start doing that?
Well, about in 2000 or 2001, I attempted a talk about Wi-Fi. That was at a time where I, as a poor person, couldn't afford owning a Wi-Fi card because it was like $320. And, well, I had a laptop, so my dream was one day I could purchase an 802.11b card, a Orinoco. Yeah, that was the gold standard at the time, even though it had many flaws. And, well, even before that, somebody made a talk about Wi-Fi, and he mentioned that they are able to do peer-to-peer communication between stations. And I said, oh, wow. And since the computer, we can start routing. And we can auto-detect the routes and create a routing table, so we built a mesh network. I didn't know the term mesh. I just had the idea to use Wi-Fi devices as a way to create an organically growing, self-healing, distributed network that could be ubiquitous and give all the people a basic access to internet. But it was basically also what I lacked of, because at the beginning, I had the hope that I would get about 3 kilobytes per second from the mesh networks, and that for 24 hours a day if I wished to do it. That was like the little utopia that I had. And yeah, well, that's quite a long time ago. And yeah, it's now megabytes, or megabits rather than kilobytes.
Wow, 2001. Prior to that,
that's what when I had the idea, and I started to talk about it to some other guy. His name was Bruno Randolph. He's a developer from Austria that moved to Berlin, and we got to know each other. And yeah, we had this casual talk about computer technique and stuff like that. And I mentioned that idea to him, and he said, yeah, I had the same idea. And I did a research online, and I found the term mesh. And I think I even found a software, if I remember it correctly, its name was Mobile Mesh. And I said, okay, well, this is really funny that you had the same idea. And so the next time when I had the occasion to use the internet, it was a time of dial-up where you pay for each minute at modem speed. Yeah. So, but I quickly found it, and I downloaded it. It was a Linux software made by MIT-RE. I knew the MIT, but I didn't know the MIT-RE. Mitre sounds like an evil spy organization to me, like a Spectre. But someone there had obviously written a proactive routing protocol based on a link state algorithm, and he had written it for Linux. So it was great because I was using Linux, and it took me a while. Yeah, then I had a Wi-Fi card and then a second one, so I couldn't build a mesh. It was really hard for me to organize all the hardware. So eventually I had two, so I could set up a point-to-point link in ad hoc mode of Wi-Fi. And I had problems doing that. It wasn't just like I expected it to be, like configure it properly and then it works. Mm-hmm. The two Orinoco cards obviously already had problems in connecting to each other. But I thought it was my lack of skills at the time and the lack of knowledge. Yeah.
Well, did that inspire you to try to learn more?
Well, the first thing was like, there was strange behavior, but I couldn't really rule out where it came from. That was a big. If I had known at that time what problem it was to use ad hoc mode on a Wi-Fi device, if you want to do anything useful with it, I would not have started, but of course I would have started anyway. Yeah, anyway. So it was at the Chaos Computer Camp in 2003 when I had an occasion to build actually a mesh with mobile mesh because I had 3 nodes. Because somebody else was willing to join me for an experiment. So this was the first time that I saw that actually it would find and build routes and set up a routing table, and it would forward traffic. Very simple. We set up a gateway, and so the first mesh network with a gateway, that I knew of or was involved with myself in Europe. And Europe was probably at the Chaos Camp in 2003.
Wow. I don't think Wi-Fi had just started to become available really by then. I mean, the WRT54G was at like late 2002.
Yeah, but I didn't see it for a while. Mm-hmm. And people showed it to me. Hey, did you see this device? It runs Linux, and we can actually do something with it. And strangely enough, the device is still sold at an extreme price.
Well, they were very reliable gear. I mean, I know people that they're 50 haven't been made in 8 or 9 years, and people are actually, people have like guitars or amplifiers or things that are like precious relics, and it seems like we're like that for certain kinds of router hardware. That box is just legendary in its configurability,
but it wasn't actually the start. It was really helpful for us when they came. Actually, I was very poor, so I was doing recycling. I was involved in today you would call it hackerspace or makerspace. A group of open source evangelists from, most like the anarchist type. They had an internet cafe where they would give internet for free when it was really a precious thing. So I joined this group, so we had a ISDN line that would give us like 7 kilobytes per second, and we shared it with like 10 computers. So we expected people to go to our internet cafe and surf together on a 7 kilobyte per second line.
So, but this is back when, 128 kilobits. I mean, you can't buy anything that slow these days, and people would go out to get on the internet.
It was actually 64 for us, because for 128 you would pay double.
Right, and we used to have to live in a hole in the road. You were lucky.
No, but for me it was great. It was only the availability of having internet all the time. That was what I wanted to have. Of course, speed is the next question or the thing that you're going to ask for. But first, I wanted to be connected and not without having to watch the watch, like having it as a commodity that is available all the time that everybody can afford.
That's a beautiful dream. We were very close to it.
Yes, pretty much, yes.
Yeah, I gotta tell a story. I gotta tell the Cybernation story. I was running an ISP at the time, and these guys started at the very first internet coffee shop in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This was 2004. And all they could get was a 64K line. And the place would be packed every night. People wanted to go. They would dress up to go out to get on the internet. And it was exciting. So I ended up, the coffee shop was called Cybernation, and I was sitting outside one day, and 3 stories walked by, basically. And I came up with this kind of odd tune that talks about the ambivalence of, the happy ambivalence that I have towards the internet then and now. And yeah, it's fun to sing, and the memory of that period was so exciting.
I suppose you have a recording of that.
The song, yeah, I got a couple of them, but I've never laid it down the way I want to.
Well, maybe you can use that if you edit it as a musical interruption.
Yeah, I could. Welcome to the Cybernation Show. No. Anyway.
Well, we wanted to proceed, actually, and somehow I made this detour back into history, just musing around in my memories. That was so I had this vision of having ubiquitous communication for everyone, including me, and 24 hours without people charging me for the minute. And so what we did in that little educational center that we had set up, we were rebuilding old computers, like refurbishing them and giving them to refugees. What is this? Is this my phone?
That's mine going off, but I got my friend Evan. All right, we interrupt this podcast briefly. Nothing. I am in a podcast. Can't talk. Sorry, dude.
You should just disconnect yourself for
the universe.
sessions.
How could we? Again, moving fast forward today, we have almost ubiquitous connectivity. We're always on. We're tied. There's no possible way to get away from it.
Who is we? Did you see that interactive GIF? Well, no, not interactive. That GIF that Twitter has created. Edward Snowden is now on Twitter, and he joined Twitter on the 27th of September. And he now has 1.1 million followers. Well, that was the last time I checked. It was about an hour ago.
Holy crap.
And Twitter has made a GIF, the world map, and where you see people following Edward Snowden popping up. And it's amazing. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Well, for people listening to us for the first time or have missed the Snowden thing, there he is on Twitter since one day ago. 1.11 million followers. That still means there's approximately somewhere between 3 and 6 billion people that haven't heard of Mr. Snowden. And I get choked up about this as an engineer. I really do. We have to build systems that allow people to communicate as freely as possible and as securely as possible. It's like we're bringing an Orwellian world on us.
But do we fight Orwell with technology? I
turn on, log off, turn off, log out, and drop out. The anti-internet movement.
I'm afraid the problem that you're actually trying to fix with technology is not rooted in technology, and technology is not a suitable patch to fix it. It's like rewriting the code that has become a mess instead of just patching something that is totally weird and unmaintainable and completely broken by design. Because the first time you've made it, you didn't know how to build it.
Oh, are we talking about the internet or the structure of society itself?
Both.
Yes. Moving to the structure of society instead of the internet for a minute. Again, as an engineer, you absolutely have to believe in fundamental physical law and to obey it. And most of our other human laws are really arbitrary.
Perfectly, yes.
The FCC regulations being proposed are just the latest piece of stupidity to come out of a regulation regime that can't figure out how to make a reasonably correct screw. We are still screwed regarding screws. We have metric and we have English, and you move from one place to another, and nothing you own will work again. I'm just shipping a whole bunch of stuff out here, and it's all American style. Grump. So we have standards agencies that actually decided the size of a screw.
Who is we?
We. Multiple societies in multiple countries throughout the world have standard organizations to create specifications for computers and screws.
There's a difference between laws and conventions. Like, when you're subject to the law, this means essentially that you are forced to do something at the will of other people. That is the law of society. The law of nature is that you better obey nature because it's a force and you're part of it, so you better know how to deal with it and obey it in that sense. But it's not obeying, it's just living as a living creature that is intelligent and responds to the stimuli that are external and that you feel from yourself. Like you are hungry, you get thirsty, you need to pee, and you know how to appropriately respond to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting too broad probably at the moment.
Well, we're trying to reach to a meta point. The whole debate is. All right, well, I've been having other quotes.
We're not acting intelligent as society. That's the fundamental point.
It's possibly inversely proportional. Overall IQ is inversely proportional to the number of people in the organization.
I doubt that the intelligence that we need to survive can be measured as an IQ. I doubt it.
Well, you've given me some of that talk before.
That has an annoyed undertone?
No, it's not an annoyed undertone. This is the first chance we've had to record one of our conversations in a good quality.
Yeah.
God, it's so nice to be Dr. Dave again. It's just groovy. Welcome to Dr. Dave.
Well, you cannot impress me with your title. You can impress me with what you're doing.
Well, I can't call myself, again, on the radio I can, but not in reality. It would be nice to do it in reality. But I did want to talk about, it's sort of like moral IQ. At some point, these two lines cross. Actually, at all points, these two lines cross. You cannot break the laws of nature. Next question. And so the analogy I was going to make is...
But the laws that people make because they abuse their powers, they need to be broken.
Or they need to be changed.
Well, it once
ignored, broken, or changed.
If I say that, I'm reminded about South Africa and the laws of apartheid, and the laws we had in Germany between 1933 and 1945. And I would not call anybody obeying that type of laws call a sane person. That's when right becomes wrong, and vice versa.
So, can you imagine being at VW?
Sorry, what?
Can you imagine being at Volkswagen and being an engineer or a manager and having to take care of your family and keep your house over your head and knowing they're going to work every day, violating the law, polluting the atmosphere?
There was no whistleblower coming up with that.
But
everybody knew it.
Everybody. It might have started small, but judging from what I'm seeing, it looks like they were sending specialized engineers out to supervise the tests. And that is just such a betrayal of basic ethics.
Our dignity sells for so little.
Yeah. So the software. The thing is this is so fixable. I saw one thing on the internet. We should take back and crush all these cars or something like that. Like, no, it's just a patch. It's a couple lines of code. It might even be one line of code.
Why did they use that patch in the first place? Why are their engines not running without that patch all the time? Why do you actually have to kill people? Because it's only of statistical value. It's only of statistical value. If you pollute the air 70 times more than you're actually allowed to, all the time, there will be more cases of cancer or whatever. But of course, they're probably not your neighbors, and they're not the people that you actually care for.
Well,
Right?
Except when it is. It is giving corporations or even individual developers the ability to lie and or evade critical legislation is just the complete repudiation of the automakers have been using the DMCA.
What is it? I'm not
the
here.
Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Basically, it
So the software is protected.
is, quote, protected. Now, I'm all in favor of copyright. I think it's awesome. And if you copyright the words, you should keep the words. But if you turn the words into something else, like computer code, binary code, that's no longer copyrightable. It's sort of like, here, you can read this book, but it's written in a language you've never heard of. And it's an enormous barrier to progress, and it's certainly a huge enhancement to people that just want to lie. And, you have to be honest to the nature. We know that open source code, this problem would never have happened. There would have been no incentive to lie. The regulators would have been able to see any line and any researcher as well, and it would just never have happened.
They would have to publish the code in the future. So we can actually check, that's what you're suggesting, whether they're cheating or not. But you can also hide stuff in code because, it was pretty obvious. There's even, I don't remember it, but there's a German word for the game that they're playing.
Yeah?
It's a word. If you are interested in cars and in the car industry, there's a word for it. There's a word for tuning your system so it performs better if it detects that this is a test. This is a known word, and now we see that this strategy has been used to fake not only the fuel consumption of cars. Yeah, it was to fake the amount of pollution that you create with that car. And this is something, this is really something. Are we living in a dystopian science fiction world, actually? Please tell me.
Well,
I have serious doubts.
One of these days, I would not mind, stop the planet, let me off. It would be great. I think, chop off my legs, ship me up as a brain box. I don't care, get me off the planet. Anyway, but to stay on to try to migrate the Volkswagen conversation back to, for the last 2 years of my life, I have been trying to build better Wi-Fi devices. And I've worked with every manufacturer to try to get them to open up their firmware, which the FCC had basically effectively mandated.
You tried to work with them, did you?
Tried. The last 2 years. Total failure. I got promise after broken promise after broken promise. And it's not new. It's been going on like that kind of proprietariness about code, which is a really tiny amount of code, by the way. Just completely stopped my efforts cold. And
I might be annoying you, but this is still, we have to first hack the planet.
Okay, that's your job, Electra. I just want to fix things.
Well, actually, I wanna fix just that. really. I'm into the same business. Just I'm a little bit more radical. Maybe you are pretty radical in many parts and in many regards, and maybe you're already too radical for the people that you're trying to communicate with. Don't you think so?
Well, I've been practicing. You know, I do go to meetings of the IEEE and the IETF, two different layers of the stack, and this is my first foray in a political issue, like, ever. I just lost it. I got so pissed off about the sea of just filth, toxic waste that is being allowed to be produced and papered over with, here's your certification.
Well, in the EU, actually, we it doesn't work like with the FCC. You produce something, you declare it's compliant, and then you start selling it.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Volkswagen. Here's my new router. Works great on the test bed. Turn it loose on the internet. And this is actually the case on almost every home router being sold today. They are all, well over half of them are vulnerable to exploits on day one.
I'm not a native American English or English speaker.
Sorry.
But I'm talking about ignorance, and what you're facing is ignorance. Is this the correct term?
Here's one. I would like to ask every politician out there, and a lot of people can't do this. They don't keep it in their head, but I hope you can. How do you calculate mean time between failure?
Mean time between failure. How do you calculate it?
Yes. Say you have two components.
No. In order to do that, I would have to have a big amount of devices and use them in different types of environments. And after running it for like 200,000 hours, I can tell you, like a calculation of a mean time between failure. Or average failure, how do you call it?
Mean time to failure, MTB.
MTB.
Yeah, MTBF.
MTBF. If the device is broken by design, but the design breaks after 200 hours and you didn't test it for 201 hours, well, then how do you calculate it? What does this calculation really mean?
Well, to me, again, MTBF is something that I think everyone making law, it's not akin to nature's law, should think about, and in trying to correctly evaluate the risks of exposing extra spectrum. You know, I've been digging on this for 3 weeks, and I can't find anything more specific driving this set of legislation than a report of 40 pieces of interference around the United States, 25 which were in one airport, and that's it. Okay, so here's this massive overreach to save.
This is not a massive overreach. This is actually ludicrous.
Just
this is completely ludicrous. This is Kafka's world, right? This is Kafka's world. We're talking about what was interfered. The Doppler radar. What does it do? Does it locate airplanes in the air?
The Doppler radar in this case is used for weather.
Yes. We had the same in Germany that you could see on weather radars, the lobes of 5 gigahertz links, because they were configured for the same channel.
Yes.
And you could often see that as a ray in the cloud. We had some rays coming from Berlin, and we had some rays coming from Hamburg.
Cool.
Heading south. So people got informed that their beams are visible on the weather radar, and so they stopped. End of story.
Yeah.
End of story. Why do you need to lock down firmware for all devices on the planet?
Yeah, I heard a little bit more about the story, and I'm not sure if what I'd heard is that one day...
I'm talking about Germany, right?
In Germany. One day someone actually did accidentally roll out a piece of software that was not compliant. And it was immediately noticed and immediately fixed, or I mean, like within a day. And, you know, mistakes happen, you know, that's what, but, you know, we fixed it in a day.
No. It's much more simple than that. It's much more simple than that. Some people thought it would be wise that devices, consumer devices that are aimed at low cost, should do something complex like detect whether some noise that they receive on their channel is actually radar, which is a very complicated task.
Yes.
For a simple device. So when you try to implement that, there's a lot of false positives. So the device actually goes off or switches channels and creates a hell lot of problems just for the mere fact that you just don't adjust the channel, so the device has to figure that out itself. So you have all these problems. So why not keep them separate? There is so much spectrum. Well, there is a very finite amount of spectrum, but most of it is actually owned by the military. And it was owned by the television broadcasters.
Do you think it could be, I mean, again, given the unbelievable lack of evidence the FCC or the EU can use to justify this, you know, do you think there's a military request here?
No. It's just a government body that has rules that some people that thought they were smart thought would be smart rules, and it would be smart to have an entity and institution like that. So one could or could not argue with that, and obviously how they play their game is not very adequate, to put it mildly. And their communications are not very fortunate, to put it mildly. So
let me play devil's advocate, okay?
All right.
You already know my viewpoint, but I'll try to represent the other side.
Oh, will you manage? Please go ahead.
My dad trained me to do this, and I have to. So we have the problem of accidentally missharing the spectrum at a very large scale. We have the related problem of the technical solution so far is actually pretty hard to implement. It's political compromise. We promise not to do this if we do this, and yeah, it's working okay now. We've got some decent code for doing the DFS thing, but it still means that you have to hop off that channel when you detect that radar. And
which is very easy if you have a simple access point client solution, but if you try to do that with a mesh network, it's way more complicated, because in principle all the stations of your mesh network can detect radar and then tell the others that they have to switch channels.
Oh, that's that part of the spec?
Well, the spec just says, well, act appropriately.
Yeah.
That's it?
That's it? That's great guidance. I think we should just change almost all the laws to be that and see what happens.
I think that's basically what it's all about. Act appropriately. You know, in such a complicated matter, they just say, well, do the best you can. Right? Simple. Do the best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we do this all the time?
I don't know.
Why don't we just subscribe to this?
Well, have you been paying attention to the minstrel blues work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Blues. Not blues.
Minstrel blues, and it's by Thomas Hune. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the umlauts over the top.
Thomas. Well, I only know him by his nickname, which is Bluesa.
Bluesa.
So he came up with minstrel blues.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Well, minstrel, for those listening, is a rate control algorithm, and it's pretty widely regarded to be the best in the world. And it is in hundreds of millions of devices. And what it does is really neat. It transmits at different rates depending on the success probability. And it tries to find one, at whatever distance you are, if you're moving or something like that, that's pretty much always not going to drop packets. And it's awesome. It was developed by a friend of mine and two of his buddies on a war drive in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
It's now hundreds of millions, maybe billions of devices. Not bad. They have not had a chance to rework that work or look at it in the environment where not only we have radars, but we have dozens of more devices radiating all the time. interfering with each other. And Thomas came up with this really beautiful way of doing coupled rate and power control. And what that means is if you have two devices right next to each other, the algorithm can figure out if you only need a milliwatt rather than a watt. And if you only broadcast that milliwatt, it falls off so rapidly something else in the same room wouldn't be able to hear it. And that's a major innovation in Wi-Fi being done in the public, the best research we know possible, and making available as free open source code for anyone to try. And if we can't, if one of the devices I use in my project, ZeraWord, was just locked down, the Wonder 4300, that was one of my, I can't work on it anymore. And, sorry, I lost my temper there.
I know exactly what you mean. But but anyway,
go ahead.
The interesting part is that Bluse, he did a lot of work just to verify that his patch actually improves the overall throughput for all the devices in the building. He was working at a research organization that belonged to German Telecom, if I remember. Or to Technical University. I'm not so sure. One of the two. Anyway, and it's a brilliant idea. Why did we not use it for a long time? But yeah.
The research in the wireless I was involved in the late 90s was awesome. There was billions of dollars being thrown at the problem, and now it's like copy-paste stuff that worked a decade ago. I don't get it. Part of it is that it went from $300 or $600 a thing to just a teeny little built-in chip, so you can't make any money doing future research and development on it, even if it's groundbreaking research.
Well, yeah, because it's all about money. But now let's excuse me, because I always go away from the technical stuff in a way, because goddamn, why don't you get it? We have to fix the people first. The technical solutions will not make it.
All right, well, try hacking a brain. What would you do to a guy in the FCC?
I would talk to the person, like with any other person that is willing to have an intense conversation with me. And given that, my first question, I usually ask questions to the people. My first question is, do you ask yourself? What is you?
We're going deep now. Going deep. Akchung. You saying that right?
So I've asked you this before, but not in front of a high-quality microphone. So what is your answer to that question?
Oh, I don't remember. I gave you a couple different ones.
What is the answer of today?
Why don't you ask it to me again, and I will tell you the first thing that pops into my mind.
Okay. Do you ask yourself?
Popsicles. That's the first thing that came into my mind.
I don't know this word. Is it a creation of yours?
A popsicle is a frozen beverage thingy on a stick. That's a popsicle. Now, someone try to analyze what I just said. Holy cow. Anyway, so what you're talking about is a sort of...
So it's something you enjoy. I guess you enjoy popsicles, or you did enjoy popsicles when you were a kid.
I don't know. I take that one somewhere else. All right. But anyway, so what you're talking about is your internal dialogue. Years and years ago, I wrote a piece called Inside the Internet Mind. And and you've recommended, it's the bicameral mind book? There's two
Julian
books.
James.
Julian James,
The Creation of Consciousness, or The Origin of Consciousness. Oh, I don't know the English title. The German title is different, of course.
Yeah, well, you've written a book recently, haven't you?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Serenität, which translated means serenity. But actually, it's funny, the German word Serenität, for serenity, it's not known in Germany anymore. It was used hundreds of years ago. So, yeah, the meaning is quite forgotten, but it also was used in a different way. it would be a title for a person that you absolutely respected, that you had a deep respect for. You would call the person Ihre Serenität.
Ah, well, does it have like any relationship to like guru or I don't know, monk or priest or anything like that?
No.
No,
No.
it's just a state of being.
A social status.
Okay.
They used it for a social status. But I would just say, well, if you have peace with yourself, inner silence, a deep, feeling relaxed inside, and you just follow your intuition, and like what most people do, they try to put together a puzzle in their heads. And I have learned if I don't try to do that deliberately, all the stuff will fall into its place on its own. I could just watch.
Yeah. The only thing I can equate that to is the Zen experience, being empty or having given up. For me, giving up is always tremendously productive eventually. But sometimes you just got to fight for a while before I can give up and let stuff happen.
Where do you fight? What is the front that you are fighting at, the frontier?
Well, I'd like us to get into space. I would really like us as humans.
You are an astronaut or cosmonaut already on Earth, on our ship Earth.
But it steers like a planet. Can't corner.
That's true. That's true. And I hope that mankind will evolve further and survive, and life as such. We're a product of life. We call ourselves humans. That life that it created, or that was not created by anyone, but that was created by nature here on this planet. I don't know if a better word. I would like to have a better word than creation, yeah, because creation is associated with Christianity or religious beliefs about a beardy sky fairy, wishing that there will be a universe, whatever.
I really happen to like all the Greek gods and the stories that they tell and their backgrounds and so many other.
But you don't believe in them. You don't have a belief system. Do you have a belief system, Dave?
Do I have a belief system? Unfortunately, then you have to define what a belief system is. I believe in following the data wherever it goes. If you were to tell me with absolute certainty, proven certainty, that a bearded fairy created the universe, okay.
But where's the evidence for that? I just created it.
But there's certainly, I love the archetypes, Mars, the god, and Jupiter, and the relationships that they had with other people in the pantheon, Athena and Minerva and so on, those characters. Those interpersonal stories are just ourselves writ large as archetypes. And it would be really cool if more people dug Athena or Brigitte of the or Celtic mythology.
But what roles do archetypes play in your life? Is this something that you ponder on?
You're saying rules or roles? What rules?
No.
If you have an archetype, you have something that you want to emulate?
No. Do archetypes play a role in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Is it something of importance?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just talk about heroes. My biggest hero is Richard Feynman.
But I don't have a hero.
Well, you are one. It doesn't mean you don't.
But what is a heroism, like this belief, this ideology, to believe that some outstanding individual will do something so important that all the others can't do? That's not a story from a sane society. That's not a story from a sane society.
No?
No. You don't have to wait for the hero.
Everyone should be a hero.
Then there's no heroes.
It'd be awesome if that was the case.
Then we would be all just awesome.
Yeah. I need to take a break right now. I'll be back with you. This is with Dave Tott with Electra.